Hello, I want to talk briefly about the Bill of Rights. One of the biggest complaints the Anti-Federalists had against the Constitution, ratifying the Constitution, was that there really was no protection for individual rights from a government becoming a tyranny. And you can make an argument that this is valid. The Constitution was designed to produce a stronger national government, and many people were afraid that this strong national government would step on individual rights. Among these people who were concerned about this was one Thomas Jefferson. Yes, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That Thomas Jefferson. And he was in close correspondence with James Madison, the primary architect of the Constitution. And he voiced his concern about a lack of the Bill of Rights. And there's a series of letters where they write back and forth, and which they frequently did. And it's interesting to see the positions begin to evolve for Madison. Jefferson points out that there's no protection for individual rights, and that so long as there is no protection for individuals, that it's going to be very difficult to get people to fully support the Constitution, and that Jefferson is going to be a little suspicious of it. And Madison is going to counter that there's plenty of things within the Constitution to limit the government, that you have checks and balances, you have separation of powers, that if one branch of say the presidency gets too power hungry, the legislature can rein that person in, or if the Senate tries to pass a bad law, the House of Representatives can choose not to vote for it, or possibly the president could veto bad laws. And the idea of a Supreme Court meeting and declaring things unconstitutional really wasn't a thing yet. But George Washington did. In fact, the only things he ever vetoed were things that he felt were unconstitutional. So he's kind of acting a little bit like the judicial review. And besides, as Madison pointed out, other states have bills of rights. Even the English Bill of Rights was largely ignored by the British Crown. And so the idea, he called them paper walls, that just because you have a bunch of rights written down doesn't mean that they're going to be honored. And that doesn't mean that they're going to be respected by their government. The government could just violate, if you can violate one law, it can violate another law kind of attitude. Well, Jefferson points out that while it is true that individual rights have been written down in the past and then have been violated by the very governments that wrote them, particularly when it came to religious liberties and things of this nature, that it's still important to have those laws down and recorded as a touchstone, as a judgment, or as a what's the word I'm looking for? As a goal, and that this is the law. And so when they violate these things, you can come back and say, but you're violating the law, and you can turn around and try to redirect that government back to where it should be. If you don't have a Declaration of Rights or a Bill of Rights or anything like this, that you don't have any legal grounds on which to stand. Madison then pointed out, well, okay, so you have these paper walls, but how do you write a list of all the rights that a person should have? I mean, you could start with saying, okay, well, they have a right to life, liberty, or that they have a right to freedom of speech, freedom to assemble peaceably, freedom to petition their government, practice their religion, freedom of the press, and then they have all these other freedoms. But you can't. They also have a right to eat hamburgers on Thursday. They have a right to seek an education. They have a right to drive Ford. Whatever it is. And there's no way you could make a list of all these rights that should be included in some sort of list, which Jefferson, reading that, said, that's right, that'd be a huge list. But you know what? Half a loaf of bread is better than no loaf of bread. Let's let us work together and preserve those rights we feel are most important and begin building from there. Interestingly enough, Madison would actually solve this problem himself. He would propose the Ninth Amendment, the Ninth Amendment, which says that all those rights listed in the Bill of Rights, that those are not exclusive. They're not saying, and that they shouldn't be interpreted as you have these rights, boom, 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 and nothing that's not on the list. Instead, he comes in with the Ninth Amendment and says, yes, you have these lists of rights, but this list is not in any way, form, or fashion should be interpreted as being an exclusive list, that you don't have any other rights beyond what is listed, which was another thing that Madison was afraid of. If we put together a list of rights, that people are going to interpret this as, well, it's not on the list, therefore, it doesn't exist. That you really don't have a right to eat hamburgers on Thursday, or you really don't have a right to buy the vehicle that you can afford, that you want to buy. Instead, government should be telling you what you should drive. Now we go, that's silly. No one would ever think that, but they're trying to think of all the possibilities of things that could go wrong. And finally, Jefferson points out that in order to preserve the Union, that a Bill of Rights may be necessary because it will help put on paper a list of these are the things that we deem important. And in a way, I kind of wonder if maybe that wasn't the most convincing argument to Madison, who had worked so hard to preserve the Union, writing a constitution. And one of the things he will point out and even though he didn't think, he at first thinks that we don't need a Bill of Rights, he will be the one who proposes the Bill of Rights to the House of Representatives himself. So here is the author of the Constitution saying, you know what, let's make these adjustments and make it better. So that carried a lot of moral authority when he did that. So he's going to come in and he's going to propose this, at least in part because it will help to hold the Union together. And it will give us something that we can all hold as being common. Because the interests of the North, the interests of the South, the interests of the Middle, the West, the East, the ones on the coast, the ones not on the coast, the rich, the poor, oftentimes these interests are going to be very diverse and different. But if we can come up with something that all Americans agree on, then that's probably going to be that we believe we have a right to free speech. We believe we have a right to practice our religion, or to practice no religion at all. We believe we have a right to petition our government. Those are things that are going to become very fundamentally American. In fact, one historian is going to actually describe it as the Constitution is not what makes America American. It's the Bill of Rights that makes America American. So I'm going to cut this. I'm going to make this kind of a short video for that reason. The Constitution created a strong government, and it's still a strong government. But it is the Bill of Rights, that fundamentally very American list of things, that is really going to put the limits on government. Government will always have good people and bad people in it. But the Bill of Rights were designed more than any other single thing, even in the early years of our republic, for the people. The Constitution is for the government, for national and state, and while they say the authority derives from popular sovereignty, it's really not built for people, for individuals. The Bill of Rights is. So keep that in mind as you practice your rights to continue your education. And until then, I will talk to you later.